Well, turning now to Washington, where the Supreme Court will hear a major abortion rights case today. People crammed, or rather camped out overnight ahead of the arguments.
This is the first major abortion case the court will hear since President Trump appointed Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh to the bench and shifted the court to a conservative majority. Jan Crawford takes a look at what exactly is at stake.
When the justices announced their last abortion decision, supporters of abortion rights cheered. Their victory may be short-lived.
It's totally possible that we would have to close.
Kathleen Pittman is administrator of Hope Medical Group for Women, the Shreveport, Louisiana clinic at the center of the next major battle over abortion rights.
You're required to have a doctor session.
Pittman's clinic is challenging a Louisiana law that tightens regulations and says doctors must have admitting privileges at a local hospital.
What would happen if the court were to rule that the law could stand?
It would be devastating.
Devastating?
Devastating, not just for the people in our area, but statewide, and I think there would be national repercussions as well.
More than a dozen other states has similar laws, many passed after the arrest of Pennsylvania abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell, who was convicted in the death of a patient and murder of 3 infants. Abortion opponents like March for Life President Jeannie Mancini say these laws are necessary to better protect women's health.
Abortion clinics say that it's unnecessary because abortion is a safe procedure.
What other procedure do we know that's done at an outpatient facility that doesn't have admitting privileges? It's giving abortion a pass.
But in 2016, the Supreme Court rejected that argument, striking down an almost identical law from Texas. The 5-3 decision turned on the vote of Justice Anthony Kennedy, who sided with liberals. Mancini says the situation in Louisiana is different.
There are real-life instances of substandard care in Louisiana, and there have been more problems with the abortion clinics in Louisiana.
And in 2018, Justice Brett Kavanaugh replaced Kennedy, giving abortion opponents hope that this new Supreme Court may see this case differently, something abortion rights supporters fear.
The point of the law is to make it more difficult for clinics to function and to remain open. Without a doubt.
And for more insight on this, Jan joins us now from outside the Supreme Court. Jan, we've seen the protesters for both pro and those that are against, but one factor that differentiates this case from the one the court heard back in 2016 is that for the very first time, there's an argument that doctors and clinics do not have the legal standing to challenge an abortion law on behalf of their patients. Can you explain to our audience why that's so significant?
Sure, and you're right, it is really significant. There are several other things that make this case different than the Texas case. At least that's what defenders of the Louisiana law say. They say the situation in Louisiana is different, the clinics are different, driving distances are different, so they say that should make a difference as well. But there is this new issue in this case that the court didn't look at back in 2016, and that's whether the abortion clinics and the doctors can be the ones challenging these laws, or whether that should be the patients. The argument goes that the clinics and the doctors aren't really in the best place to look out for patients' health and safety, so they're the wrong people to be suing to challenge the laws, because what if it's a bad clinic and it's unsafe? They're not going to be the ones looking out for the patients. So that's kind of that standing argument, as it calls, who is the proper person to bring lawsuits challenging these cases. That is a very important legal issue. It sounds academic, but people say that it could really narrow the ability to bring some of these cases.
And this is also the first major abortion case that the court is hearing, with Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh on the bench. They are conservative-leaning justices. Do we have any clue as to how they might rule?
Well, the court has gotten a few abortion cases here. They've not agreed to hear any until this one, but there's a couple clues that we can read, although it's very difficult to predict. I mean, Justice Gorsuch replacing Justice Scalia, I would expect he is probably going to vote about the same. And Justice Scalia was a staunch opponent of abortion rights, did not believe that Roe versus Wade was legitimate, that the Constitution doesn't say right to privacy. So based on some of the things that Justice Gorsuch has done, I could see him kind of continuing on the path that Justice Scalia had laid down before him, and that would not change anything. So that's not going to change the way the court approaches abortion rights. The big question is Justice Kavanaugh, who of course replaced Justice Kennedy. Justice Kennedy was a conservative, but he sided with liberals on some of these key social issues like abortion rights. And so he would often be, and was back in 2016, the key fifth vote with the liberals to strike down the restrictive Texas law. The question is now, will Justice Kavanaugh see this law the same way? And, you know, we'll see if maybe we can get a clue from the arguments today. I doubt it. He doesn't normally tip his hand during these arguments, so I think he's going to be pretty hard to predict. Obviously, people on both sides, that's who they're really going to be focusing on today during the argument and afterward, hoping that they can woo him over to their side, that he will vote like Justice Kennedy did. But I think right now that's going to be very difficult to predict. We probably won't have a good idea after the argument, like I said, so it may be come June, when I expect a decision in this case, that we'll finally get our answer.
And Jan, as you know, the court is expected to rule on this by the end of June. If it does rule in favor of Louisiana, what are the immediate implications for women in the state who may be seeking an abortion?
Well, when we talked to the administrator of the clinic that's at the center of this case, she said that it's possible that that clinic will close. And there's one doctor, he might have to handle everything on his own, and he may not be willing to do that. So if that happens, if that clinic closes, that would leave really 2 clinics left in the state of Louisiana, and women would just have to drive further to get an abortion, and they have waiting periods there. So she says that it would be pretty onerous. The supporters of the law say, you know, it doesn't have to close, just get a doctor with admitting privileges. That's important for health and safety. But these things, I think, when you see come down, if they rule that this law is going to be upheld, these restrictions can remain in place, I think you're going to see kind of this widespread outcry that this is going to have these dire consequences. And we see that often. I mean, that's generally what people will say. The question is, does that happen? And in some states, in previous cases, we have seen certainly a drastic reduction in the number of clinics. Now, people on the other side say that's exactly what they hope will happen, that they look for a day when abortion will be considered unthinkable. So, you know, the fewer clinics, the better in their minds. But it's going to be a major issue, as you know, and certainly remember June, that is going to be right in the middle of the presidential election. So I think this is also going to have a huge impact in what you know, the people on both sides are talking about in the election as well.
All right, Jen, thank you very much.